3 in the books. Time to do another video. Roll the intro. So the Lions played the Falcons in week 3. They played them at home. It was at Ford Field. Last week I said that the defense was a major problem, and it was. And they gave up way too many air yards, way too many. Like, the secondary was just, everything was running completely wide open in the secondary. Nobody was covering basically anyone. This week, the defense really showed up in most ways. I'll get back to the most part of that sentence, but basically I want to start with 7 sacks. They've had 1 in the first 2 games. That was Alex Anzalone late in the Seahawks game. But 7 in this one. 2 for Aiden Hutchinson, 1 for Harris, 1 for Campbell, 1 for Barnes, 1 for McNeil, and 1 for Jones. They were all over the place. They were in the backfield constantly. Ritter really never had space to be comfortable, and he also held onto the ball too long. That also kind of helped the Lions' pass rush. Hutchinson, he was always just a half a second late on some of his sacks. There would-be sacks in the first 2 games. He sped it up a little bit and was able to get to the quarterback in this game. Brian Branch also was everywhere, the rookie nickel corner that they drafted. He had 11 tackles. He was, he was all over the place, really stopped Bijan Robinson from really being able to get going in this game. Both running backs, Bijan and Tyler Algier, really didn't do much of anything, which is surprising based off of how efficient the Falcons' running game typically is. He also did have 1 pretty bad penalty, but he did come back on the next play or the play after that and make up for it, so that's nice to see. The secondary was also extremely aggressive. They were, very close in coverage the entire game. They were very physical, which is something that they have historically not been since I've been alive, which was good to see in most ways. Cameron Sutton, the number 1 corner on the outside, he was very, very handsy, very aggressive, making sure that they can't get away from him. And that is good until it's not. He wasn't called on many penalties in this previous game against the Falcons, but going forward, if the refs notice that and if the team points it out, that could become a problem in terms of pass interferences or illegal contacts. But he didn't really get called much in the Falcons game, which is nice. He could have been on a couple plays that I noticed, but mostly that was pretty good. And honestly, just a great job containing the Falcons' run game. 44 rush yards the entire game for both Bijan and for Tyler Algier and for Desmond Ritter. All of them can run, and all of them can run very effectively, but they did not allow that to happen. And the pass game, the secondary, they played relatively well. They did, it was more yards than rushing, but that typically happens in the NFL nowadays. But I think the defense played pretty well outside of this one thing. The Falcons could have scored more than 6 points if they wanted to. They went for it on a 4th down at one point that if they would have just kicked the field goal, they would have had more points. They would have ended with 9. They also missed a field goal at one point in the game, and then they went for it in another 4th down late in the game. If they would have just kicked those 2 field goals, the score is a lot closer than it looks on paper. But there's always those kind of things where, yeah, it could have been closer, but it wasn't. And Younghoe Koo is a very good kicker. He just happened to miss one at that particular time. They went for it on the 4th down because they felt like they needed some momentum. Because The one thing that I will say that I think is the only negative I take from this game is the offense started super fast. They were electric to start the game. They cooled off considerably, especially in that second half. They had 13 points going into halftime, and they only scored once after that. And I believe it wasn't until either late in the third quarter or in the fourth quarter. Jared Goff at one point was 14 of 16, just like last week. He was, on fire to start the game. And then they cooled off quite a bit. And that's okay when you play the Falcons, because the Falcons do not have a good offense. They haven't for years now. That continues to be the case into this year. When you play an offensive team, though, you might need to score more than 20 points. They did have that one shootout versus the Seahawks, but overall, I don't think the offense has been as explosive or as reliable to score points as they were last year. It is still early in the year, so they could fix that, and I'm not saying that they are bad necessarily. It's just something to keep an eye on. In terms of offensive performances themselves, Jared Goff was really good, other than the one pick that he threw. The pick was kind of bad. I don't really know what his plan was here, but, quarterbacks have that every once in a while. Jahmyr Gibbs played better in his bigger role than he did in the previous week. Pretty efficient, had 80 yards rushing, had a couple of catches. Overall, I think he played very well. I'm excited to see what he can do in the future. I was hoping to see maybe 100 yards. That would be nice to see a Lions running back do that for once. But so far, he's been pretty good. Amon-Ra St. Brown entering the game was questionable, and he's still balling out, which is good for my fantasy team, and good for the Lions in general. He's... Nobody can stop him, it feels like. And even though everyone should know he's the number one receiver, nobody stops him anyway. Sam Laporta, also the second leading receiver on the team, the rookie tight end, he just keeps getting open. He finds ways, especially underneath passes. He seems to just be able to find the soft spots in the zone coverage. And that is something that is very important, especially for a young guy to be able to do. That's quite impressive. And the deep bomb, there was one play, I believe it was first or second quarter, where Khalif Raymond got wide open on a streak going down the field, and Goff missed him. It didn't end up mattering in the end, but that was a big splash play that they could have used to get some momentum on that drive. It was just a couple of yards overthrow, but it's just something to keep an eye on. Jimmy Garoppolo in the Super Bowl. The one other thing I will say, Penei Sewell was okay in terms of actually blocking, but hey, stop holding. He got flagged for holding like 3 or 4 times. That's too many. Stop it. That's what I have to say about that. Anyway, that's my review of this game. I think overall it was a pretty solid performance. Definitely better than the Rams. That's what you can say. They're better than the Rams were last week, specifically. And the Broncos. Good thing we're not the Broncos. Our defense is bad, but it's not that bad. Next week they play the Packers. It is a Thursday night football game. I am kind of excited for that one. I'm also a little nervous. Jordan Love is his first matchup against the Packers as a starting quarterback. We'll see how it goes. I think there's a good chance they win that game, especially because the Packers have really been struggling with Detroit the last couple of years. But it's also a possibility that Jordan Love wants to, establish I am the franchise quarterback here in Green Bay, and I'm going to make sure that we beat Detroit. I don't know. We'll have to see. It's also a game to play for the number 1 spot in the division. I believe the Lions are currently 2nd, and the Packers are 1, I think, because they beat the Bears. If the Lions win that game, then they will have the number 1 place in the division for now. I don't know what's going on with the Vikings. Kirk Cousins is getting kind of screwed over. He's had amazing stats to the start of the year, and they still haven't won. And the Bears are still the Bears. Justin Fields is bad. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next episode, where I break down the Green Bay Packer game. That could be either really good or really bad. Goodbye.